Joe, would you like to tell us the books that you have written?
Who, me?
Because I've
Oh,
written quite a few books, and some of them are very important. I'm just trying to find the snapshot that I had of them all together.
the first book was Hello, Anyone Home, and I think someone put up a link. Thank you. And that describes the process of how they decide when, where, and how, or if they're going to give a sign.
Joe, do they have to learn to send signs? How difficult is it for them to send signs? And Diane, you might want to come in on this one too. Do you know if Matthew has had to get help to send signs? I'm just curious what the process is.
Well, it's a little bit like it depends on the personality. If they're open to it, they're accepting to it. They have help on the other side to send signs. And in Diane's case, like we know, Matthew sent a sign very early when he passed, right away. He didn't have to. So they talk about it over there. The most important thing is if they're going to send the sign at all. If the person they're sending it to is really able to accept it at that point, or they're going to wait. So, you know, they have people that work it and get it all together. Like I said, the kids are very creative, and they can put more complex ones together. But also, they don't want to, you know, send us some crazy signs that we're on an expedition, looking for some type of treasure or something like that, because our attention span is short enough, and they know it. But I think Diane and Matthew had a very close connection. So Diane, you could, talk about that. I think that would help too.
Right. I think Matthew, because we had had a discussion a few days before he died about sending each other a sign if one of us should pass first, that he was already open to that as a possibility. Plus his personality. He was always very outgoing, a very social person, and he liked to play jokes and he liked to play around. Matthew, of course, sent signs right away. He knew I would pick up on it, and that did help. But what I have found over time is that Matthew has also engaged in helping other people's children connect with their parents. This has come through in many medium readings. I have heard from people I didn't even know who would ask me, I had a medium reading and I was told to contact you because my son came through that he's part of Matthew's group. What is that? Well, what it was is that Matthew would gather these young men and work with them, mostly young men, sometimes young ladies, and work with them and teach them how to connect with their parents. This is something that he just loved doing from the other side. So I think that there are helpers in spirit for our loved ones who can step up when asked to then coach and give advice and nudges to those of us still here on those signs. Matthew seemed to excel at that. I don't know if he'd had past lives and experiences doing that, maybe, but he's really good at it right now. So thank you.
What about communication through dreams? Have you ever had any dream communication, and how do our loved ones learn communicate? How do they learn to communicate through dreams? Any thoughts on either of you? Diane, you first.
Okay. Matthew's come to me in dreams. My husband has. I have a stepson over there who came through in a dream last night. I think that it's easy for them to connect with us in our dream state because our defenses to making contact are already lowered. We are in that dream state. We are in a different, what is it, the alpha, delta, theta. I've never memorized those, but we are already open to receiving messages from spirit. So it's pretty easy for them to drop in and give us something. And I know that sometimes the dreams that I have had may not be that clear to me. I have to think about it later on. It maybe makes sense later on when things happen. But it's very easy for them to drop in our dream state and say hello or,
Yeah,
send us something.
and that's exactly true. I mean, we have to realize we're multi-dimensional beings ourselves. Okay, so this is an afterlife, and this is real life in this very thick dimensional experience here on Earth. So at night, we leave our bodies, and so we're busy. So it's much easier for them to connect because we're kind of on their playing field, as opposed to an away game where they have to kind of get through our, all our electronics and our job and our responsibilities and stuff. Usually when we try to get a good night's sleep, at least some of that is going to be kind of stored away in a different part of our brain. So yeah, it's the easiest way to come through. Yeah.
So,
It's our
Joe,
natural state. It's our natural state.
what would you say to anybody who wants to get a sign from a loved one and hasn't been able to receive one yet? Is there anything that they can do to make that process of communication easier?
Yeah, it's to keep it really simple. One is to accept the fact that it's possible. To ask for a sign, you really should invite them in. I'd really like a sign, Mom. Invite them in, and then let it go. Don't put little contract about it or something. Like, I've had people say, oh yeah, I want to sign, I'm going on vacation next week, Mom, so don't send it next week. And then when I come back, I got soccer practice for 2 days. So if you could send a sign, just don't do it at the beginning of the month. You know what I mean? They put conditions on it. Don't put conditions on it. And another thing is sometimes people look for signs everywhere and you can feel like you're overwhelmed, and then you doubt yourself because you're getting, your mind's trying to make these signs up. So by asking it, set it out there, and then say, Mom, or whoever you're trying to contact, periodically, could you just check in, around birthdays or holidays and stuff, and just say their name, and it will come. You'll get a sign. And then once you get it, acknowledge it and say, thank you. Don't say, oh, I want another one. I want another one tomorrow. Can I have one? Can I get 3 this week? Although we do that. I've done that, but that's because we're human. So do accept it. And then just say, that's wonderful. Thank you. I look forward to hearing from you again. And that's it. Keep it simple. Don't put any conditions on it, and be open to it. And try to find some downtime through, people do meditations. I talk about active meditation like gardening or sports or going for a walk or nature. All those things can kind of clear the cobwebs out of our head and our systems. That helps. That's preparing your body to have insights that spirit can work with you better. I mean, it's just people have been doing it forever. Like they're working on a math problem, they can't solve it. They go for a walk, they come back, and it's like, oh, I got the answer. Because they clean all the earth junk out. So if we can do that periodically, which is good for our health, that'll help too for them to make a connection.
Thank you. Diane, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would just say that sometimes in asking for a sign, you don't want to, put a structure around it. You don't say, gee, for me, like, I would like a blue feather. Let me find a blue feather. I'll know it's you. But I would keep it open to, Matt, I've been thinking about you. It'd be nice to see, a feather. Then I go for a walk with the dog and there's a feather in the road. So I can connect that feather with Matt, right? But another sign for many people is rainbows. Well, if I say, gee, Matt, I haven't heard from you for a while. It'd be nice if you sent me a rainbow. I live in Arizona. We don't tend to get a lot of rain. So the chances of me stepping outside and seeing a rainbow are limited. But there are other ways a rainbow could appear to me. It could be a prismatic rainbow, a reflection of sun through a glass that's projected on the wall. It could be I open a book or a Facebook page and somebody has a picture of a rainbow. It could be I'm watching television and there happens to be something with a rainbow in the background. It could be coming to me in very many ways. I could just see the word rainbow somewhere. So I don't limit it to, gee, Matt, I'd like to see a rainbow. It better be out my door when I walk out there, even though it's dry as a bone. It can come in many ways. He came in one time where we were going to do a big development class over a weekend. And some friends of mine had kind of heard from Matt, we're all practicing mediums, that he was going to show rainbows. And he did. He showed someone a rainbow off the plane wing the plane was sitting ready to take off. It was frozen outside. There was moisture in the air. The sun hit it in such a way there is a circular rainbow on the wing of the plane. That's one example of a rainbow. More came through that weekend. None of them where we could walk outside and see a rainbow in the air. They came in different ways. So, you know, you try not to limit it too much, but just be aware. Ask your spirit person, gee, I'd like to see, insert whatever it is you're interested in, and then be open to those possibilities.
How about the ice cream, the ice pop, with the ice bomb, the bomb?
Right. So yeah, in this development group that we did that weekend, we sat in a little circle and Matthew jumps in right away. I knew it was him. I'm keeping my mouth shut because I want everybody to, you know, participate. And one of the things he says is, oh, I'm the bomb. And, you know, we're like, well, what does that mean? A little bit later, we have a break and the person running the group went and pulled out some snacks for everybody and pulled out a box of rainbow bomb popsicles. So it's like, oh, there we go. There's the rainbow. He's the bomb. That was pretty fascinating that he used that, knowing we would have these at our disposal later on. He was the bomb. So thank you, Joe.
Fantastic. I'm just wondering if anybody here has had that process of asking for a sign and having it come through.
Yes, I had a significant one from my father. I was with my second husband. My first marriage had been terrible, and it was not good for me at all. And when I'd met my second husband, we were having a wonderful conversation. My father's picture was on top of this piano. And I looked at him, and in my mind, I said, I hope that there's a way that I wish there was a way that I could let you know, that you could let me know how happy I am now, that you know how happy I am now. And the next day I was at work and my husband called me and he said, did you come home for work? I worked about 15 miles away. And I said, no, I'm still at work. And he said, well, somebody has put a bouquet of flowers in the kitchen. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I don't know. There's a bouquet of flowers in the dish drainer. And immediately I knew that my father had answered me. And as I said, don't touch a thing. I need to take a picture of this. And then I went home and 2 separate bunches of artificial flowers had fallen from the top of the cabinet to form a perfect bouquet in the silverware container. And it was a beautiful little bouquet of flowers. So I do believe that he answered that for me then.
Beautiful. Awesome. Gary?
Yeah, well, a few years ago, I was kind of testing my team on the other side. And I said, okay, you guys send me an owl feather. At the time I was living and working in the Sierra Mountains of California. And one day I pulled my tractor out, came lunchtime, I drive back in, it's an asphalt parking area, and there is a giant owl feather. Now, owls are nocturnal, so I'm thinking, well, that's unusual, that it would show up in the daytime. For the next week, I could not go anywhere on the property without finding owl feathers. And I said to a friend of mine, I think they're reports. I think they're reporting these owl feathers to me. And then I told the story on here with Suzanne Wilson, and Suzanne said, they're reports. So that was a nice confirmation. And, you know, all the years, 28 years I lived and worked there, I never found owl feathers. I might see one every few years. No, I found like 6 or 8. I still have them in a week, and they were just showing up everywhere. So I guess I got my confirmation from my team that they were there.
Wow. Fantastic. Nancy?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this presentation and bringing light to that we can find symbols from spirit. I have several stories to share, but one comes to mind that I'd like to share today. My mom passed many years ago in 2010, and I was going out of town for like a weekend on a trip to visit a girlfriend. in a different county. And I've been to her house before. She's in a small town. I don't know all the street names. Anyway, on the way up there, I was thinking about my mom and asked for a sign if she's still around. And I get to my friend's little town and I come up on a drive where I had to turn, and it was called Onan Drive, O-N-A-N. My name is Nancy. My mom always called me, oh, Nan. And then whatever she'd say, she always said, oh, Nan, I love you, I love you, like that. So that was my sign. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I think Spirit sends us signs, especially when we ask, and they send us more if we say thank you. But I want to say that it's about us interpreting the message and not calling it a coincidence or, well, that bird just flew by because the bird just flew by. It's us interpreting it as a message. I think that's the important point. So thanks again for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Diane and Joe. Lovely presentation. Yeah, we were lucky enough to get a multitude of signs after my son passed, mostly electronic, actually. My husband was getting most of them, though. He seemed to have got a lot of psychic messages in his head, and he felt a bit sorry for me, I think, because I wasn't getting so much. He tended not to leave me on my own in the early stages, but he went out briefly once, and I was just sitting quietly here in the early stages of grief, and suddenly, to my astonishment, the house was really quiet. I had three raps, three really loud raps in quick succession. I was so startled. Then my husband phoned to see how I was. I said, I've just heard 3 raps. And it was quite funny because he thought I was saying rats at first. He said 3 rats, and I said 3 raps. And then he paused and he said, well, you won't believe this, but this morning he was in the bath. He said, I wasn't going to tell you unless anything happened, but I had asked for you specifically to have your own sign. So these 3 raps had occurred when he was out the house, and I was the only one there to hear them. But we were very lucky to have lots of other things, crystals apparently manifesting, loads of stuff with the phone, books falling off the shelf with my son's name on, all this sort of stuff, music. I just wanted to ask a question as well, if I may. I was wondering if we're too preoccupied with wanting these signs, and it's obviously natural to really desire them, could we be impeding our loved one's spiritual progress? Because we don't seem to be getting quite the frequency of signs now that we used to. And it has been suggested it's perhaps because my son's moved further away from this dimension now, and it's presumably a bit harder perhaps to establish contact and make signs if you're further removed. I'm not sure on that.
No, I'm going to answer that right now. They can still send the signs, but we've had people like 40, 50, 60 years later come through very clearly with signs and everything. So that's not the deal. The deal is usually some people can get addicted to signs, and it's like they can't make any moves in their lives unless they hear from their loved one, oh, should I do this? Should I sell the house? Should I do this? Years and years go on. And what they want us to do is to continue on our lives, making our progress or making mistakes like we do. And sometimes they feel like that they are, that we're relying on them too much. So they want us to live our lives. That's very, very important for them. They want us to know that they're there, but they don't want us to rely on that. And because a lot of times people will, even subconsciously people will, it's like, oh, I haven't had a sign from you in 3 weeks, or even like 3 months. It's like, are you good with one a year? Are you good with one every 2 years? So it depends on each individual, but don't worry about them developing. They're doing stuff on their own. They're multitask, put it that way. It's very easy for them to be doing things, developing whatever they're working on, like working with children, or sometimes kids are working with, children that pass over because of alcohol and stuff like that. So they're working on various things, but it takes a split second to send someone a sign. It's usually something going on in our life where they just want to kind of step back and say, listen, the training wheels are coming off, you know, come on, you know, mom or so-and-so. It's kind of like, you know, I want to see you make some progress a little bit more in your life without relying on me. Something to that extent, you know? So it's, yeah, don't worry about them. They're doing their thing and they're still around. And even if people sometimes, and I'm not going to get into the whole subject right now on reincarnation, people are like, well, what happens if they reincarnate and stuff? There's still a part of our soul that always remains, you know, at home. And so that we can still contact that person, even if they decide to do like an interdimensional second life or something or whatever, because we live multiple lives at the same time on different dimensions. So, but we can still contact them. So that energy is still there, and you'll recognize it when you cross over. You know, you don't have to necessarily recognize physically, but you'll recognize their energy. You know, like like people here, if someone's been blind since birth, they're going to recognize someone's energy around them. So, yep, they're doing their own thing. Don't worry about them. Worry about
Well,
us.
thank you. That's very reassuring. So I know Karen wants to speak. I just remembered my husband. What makes that what I just mentioned remarkable? I recall my husband had specifically asked for 3 wraps, so that's what I got. So that really was interesting. And thank you for your very reassuring words. I was almost worried about my son moving on, but thank you very much. You said what I thought. Thank you.
Diane, did you want to add something to that answer before we hear from Karen?
You know, I would just add that, you know, our loved ones are always available to us, but they're not always going to step up when we're asking. You know, they do come in when they feel like we really, really maybe need to hear from them. But if we're, you know, asking them a lot and say, oh, I haven't heard anything for a while, it's okay. It's just okay. They are there. I go a long period where I don't hear anything from Matt or from Sal. And then all of a sudden something might be going on in life and there they are saying, hey, pay attention to this. Just know that they're always there and they're not on demand. It kind of relates to some of the people that I, you know, help with when Suzanne has clients ready for readings. Sometimes the clients contact me ahead of time, you know, like, well, can I ask this question? Will my son come in with this? And I would reply, you know, well, just be open to whatever your loved one wants to bring. They may not come in with a secret word or that magic image or whatever it is you're waiting for. They have things that they want you to hear from them. It may not always be what you want to hear from them. So just be open to whatever spirit wants to bring in. It can be magical when you have an open heart.
Diane, do you have a picture of your son here that we can see? We'd love to see him. Is there a picture of him in the book?
Yes, there's a picture on his
There's
back
one
cover.
in the book.
There
This
he
is him
Oh, wow.
with his dog. Yeah,
What a beautiful
that he was
photo.
with when he passed. So thank you.
Beautiful photo. Love
the
that.
one-
And we
and
have
the
one on the cover of the book. So on the back
Yeah,
cover.
the one on the back of the cover has Matthew's hands up and he's holding a rainbow between his hands.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
So what have you learned? Joe, can I ask you this question? Because we have a lot of people who have a very funny idea about the afterlife. They seem to have listened to near-death experiences and they think that we're orbs of light, that we just sort of float around without any kind of individuality. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned about how people live in the afterlife? And
So
the
we've
fact that
kind of upgraded from harps on clouds.
Right. I mean, it's like that. Yeah, really, that would be kind of boring. From some of the things, especially from parents that want to know what their children are doing and things like that. From what I've seen is they're developing on the other side. They are going into things they're interested in. If they're young, if they had planned on going into healthcare on this side, they continue that study on the other side. I thought one thing was fascinating. One thing I learned one particular night and day that I was writing one weekend. People learning musical instruments, people are learning how to do carpentry. And then they showed it to me. It's because you ever run into people that have a natural inclination for certain trades or certain music or something when they're very young, they're little, or they just take it on really easy? It's because they started to learn it on the other side. So they've had a head start over us. You know, some people are just natural, some people are artists, some people are good writers, all that stuff. A lot of times on the other side, they are learning these particular aspects that they can, you know, bring to our side and have people enjoy them. Like, you know, when I saw kids learn how to play the violin, and I saw guys working on cars and building, you know, with carpentry, I said, oh, it makes sense. It makes sense that they are doing things, learning certain things like that, because it's like hobbies they enjoy. You know, I've never seen anyone on the other side doing something they don't like. I've seen guys working jobs, the same jobs that they had here. I saw one guy, he died and he worked on an oil rig. And when he came through, he was working on an oil rig because he loved the camaraderie of working with all his friends and, you know, working out in nature and stuff. And he was doing that. So they're all doing what they want to do, you know, or they're doing things they wanted to do that they couldn't do here. You know, like when someone brought my father through and they said, what is he doing? And he says, I'm enjoying my retirement because he died. He died before his retirement here. So he says, I'm fishing. I'm enjoying my retirement. He goes, I'm not doing anything. So I worked up until the day I died. So I'm just going to retire, you know, and that came from another me that told me 20 years ago. So yeah, they're doing lots of stuff. A lot of them will learn. A lot of people that die of traumatic, how can I put this? People die of violence, children die of violence and murder and things like that. What I find is when they're on the other side, they're such higher developed beings that if they decide to come back, a lot of them are going to be in your healthcare, firefighters, doctors, social workers, psychiatrists. That's their gig because they have the compassion built in already. And even though some of them you might not think so, it's ingrained in them. And so they will move into those particular into those roles. I mean, you know, look at nurses. I mean, they're like angels, you know, ICU nurses and stuff like that. I mean, it really is. They're amazing type of work they do. And so those entities, those souls might have had a violent passing in another life or something. So, but usually if that happens, they're a very strong, advanced soul. So that's kind of you know, that's a little deeper subject, but then
Thanks,
learn
Joe.
how to
I
play the
think
guitar.
this is what people really want to know. Now, I'm going to call Diane on that in a minute, but Jennifer has got something that she wanted to add. Jennifer?
I just wanted to say my son passed away in 2014. He was 21 years old. And Joe has brought him through to me numerous times. And the last year, he has told me like that he has a marriage and he had a grandson now. And it feels like he's progressing over there along with us living here. So Joe, tell them like that they can also.
Well, they do. And I had one lady that her daughter gave me a lot of information for the second book. Carla, she died, I think, when she was 11 years old. And she's much older now and she was going into medicine and stuff. She wanted to be that when she was here. So they will progress on, you know, on the other side. When we pass, especially with a child, if we pass, we will have the opportunity to relive all the milestones in years that we think that we missed here. So let's say a child dies before high school or something. If you want to, you can relive from the minute they passed all the way through your death or their retirement or something. The high school reunion, high school graduations, college, the babies, everything. They can do that. So don't think like you're missing something. If you hear someone say, well, you know, they're older now, they're with someone over there, they're teaching baseball, they're mentors, because they're growing too. Don't think you're missing out on something like, oh, I'm not going to recognize them when I get over there. You're going to recognize them. You'll recognize them in a heartbeat, because you'll know their essence. But you'll have that option. Some people want to do that option. But when you get there, your perspective's a little bit bigger, and then you can make that choice. But an 11-year-old girl taught me that. You can relive everything. And she reminded me too, means like you relieve all the bad stuff with the good stuff. Okay, terrible teens, the fights when they're 18 or 20 years old, all that stuff, if you want to relive the life, it comes with everything. It's a regular life. It's not all like, popcorn and candy, because that's not a real life. So I
Diane.
laughed. I laughed when she told me that.
Thanks, Joe. We've actually heard this exactly the same thing from Jürgen Zever. He's actually experienced that. And he said that, you can actually step into the life as it was and continue it. It's just, our minds can't fathom it, but there you go.
Right. Right.
Diane, you wanted to add something about what Matthew's doing now, or what have you learned about people, what they do in the afterlife?
It's like Joe says, when they go over there, they're going to pursue the things that they found joy in here. And if they want to learn to play a violin, they're going to learn to play a violin. If they want to delve into, researching history, whatever it is, they have those opportunities available without the constraints that we have in a human form, which is nice. Regarding Matthew, I think lately, in the last few years, his main focus is to help others. And he's, when he passed over, one of the early messages I got from a medium was that he went early. He knew he was going to die on a soul level before he died. And he went early to show his friends that they needed to live their lives while they have the time here, that life is short. And I think his role on the other side is to continue with that message, but also to get that story out for others. That's why he's been pushing me and nudging me through various means. He wants that story out to give hope to those parents who've lost their children, to others who've lost their loved ones, that life carries on, that life continues, that everything is fine, that they're happy over there, and that his story may help lead others to heal. He has come in so many times with this concept of helping others through me by giving this story. So this is his focus right now. Now, once the story is out, I don't know what he's going to want me to do next. More likely, my husband will step in and say, okay, it's time for my story. So, there may be another book along that line. But, I know that when they get over there, they're fine. They worry about us. They don't want to see us unhappy. They don't want to see us sad, but they do want to encourage us in any way they can. Matthew has encouraged his friends, some directly and some through my relating the tales and the stories of him connecting through other people and connecting with me. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, Diane. Nancy, would you like to add something on that?
Yes, when Joe was talking earlier, a thought occurred to me. This might be a little off subject. I don't know.
Nothing's off subject. Keep going.
Have you ever come across a situation where somebody has died? Usually people who've died suddenly, they don't realize that they're dead. Have you come across that? Like when you said earlier that, okay, if there were a carpenter on this side, there would be a carpenter on the other side, maybe not realizing that they've died. I mean, I'm just wondering.
No, there are two different things. From what I was shown about what they do on the other side, they might learn certain things that they can use over here, and that's why when we see them, they seem to have a jump to it, or they have a natural inclination to certain things here. It's because they've been learning them, somewhere else. Sometimes like a sudden traumatic, at first they will be, but there people there that to meet them will be right there. So it's not, a split second, or to us, see, time is very kind of funky when you get away from this dimension and stuff. there can be an initial like jumping in the shower or something, or a cold breeze coming through the window or something like that. It's kind of like, hey, what's changed? What's going on? But their guides and stuff will be right there. And there's a lady that passed not too far from my house in an accident, and I opened up and I said, she was kind of like the accident scene was right there, and she was like, well, I can't believe this guy ran through the stop sign. And so she was kind of like going through what happened. She's like, oh, the situation. And I'm like, listen, there should be some loved ones around for you, and you can move on. And she goes, oh, I know they're here, but she's like, geez, some of these kids these days. So she's acclimating to the scene that she's involved in, that she's looking at from outside her body, but she's also aware that there are other people there for her. So and the tone of her voice changed in a matter of like 3 seconds. So I mean, it wasn't she didn't keep that anger or anything, that surprise. She goes, "Oh, I know." So
Okay, so they're
so
aware.
it's not so they're not lingering out in La La Land.
Yeah, so they're aware that they've crossed over.
Yes.
Okay.
I've just put up into the meeting, into the chat, a link to the Leslie Flint Trust. And it has a couple of stories on there of people who hadn't realised they'd died, and they were going about doing their routine, but couldn't understand, right, when they caught the tram, nobody would speak to them on the tram. So they hadn't realised that they had passed over, but they weren't dangling. It's just that they hadn't realised.
And I have to say something, Karen. Usually in that
Yeah.
situation, it's a part of them. Okay.
Yeah,
So I don't want
Yeah.
people to think like, oh, my child, she's stuck here. Or you read about, some
Right.
haunted house and a child's walking around the house. No,
That's
it
right.
can be a shadow of them or a glimpse of them. It's not their
It's
full
not-
soul or something like that. So
correct. Yeah.
it's not
But it gives you a little bit of an insight into, some of those, particularly those who are in war.
right. I mean, yeah, right. Like in Gettysburg or Ghost, and then we go into the whole genre of ghosts and stuff like that. And some are
Yeah.
actually just snapshots of time that we
Yeah.
pick up, and other ones might be a piece of that person reliving, his drill instruction or anything for the war, but their actual personality, they've crossed. But
Yeah.
that interpretation that they took on in that life right there, there's like a signature left that people
Yep.
can pick up.
Yeah, could I just add, sorry, I had my phone make noise, probably Matthew alerting me to some emergency in the area. But I wanted to make a comment about, passing over suddenly. Matthew, that was a sudden and a tragic accident that he went through. What I learned from his messaging through the mediums is that at first he was a little shocked when he looked down and saw his body laying on the ground, and he couldn't quite get his bearings. But that what came through is that the angels were there, and they told him, it's okay, you've passed over. And he was like, what are you talking about? And they said, well, let's show you. And they gave him a choice. They showed him what would happen if that body survived that accident. I mean, he was banged up really bad. They showed him what would happen if he chose to stay and the impact that would have on me and on his future. It didn't look good. So he was given the opportunity to say, well, gee, I want to go back in that body, or no, I don't. What he chose is, I don't want to put my mom through any more suffering. She has her hands full. I'm staying with you guys. This came through 2 different medium readings, a blend of him experiencing a decision. So yeah, it was tragic. He was a little bit in shock. He was not aware of his bearings, but the angels were there to help guide him and give him an opportunity to make a decision as to what to do next. So I just wanted to add that to our discussion here. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Joe, did you have anything to add to that?
It actually brought back a memory that I had forgotten probably about 30 years ago, because I always ask them how things work. And sometimes in my dream state, they'll show me how things work. how the communication works. And there was one particular scene where I was allowed, there was a group, there was going to be a passing, and it was a road, it was an accident. And I was invited up, there was like a little hill, and they were sitting on the hill. And I went up there, and then they said, watch right here. And this car of people came out of like a field. And as it pulled onto the main road, another car was speeding down, and there was a traumatic accident right there. And I was like shocked. I'm like, oh my God. And I could feel that it was a fatality accident. But they were all there. They knew it was happening. They knew before. And then the feeling that I got from a tragedy, a horrible tragedy, just turned to understanding and love, and everything was natural. It was like a natural thing. And but for a split second, I guess they allowed me to have my human feelings, because I'm like, why are you showing me this? But then I realized they were showing me because they want to let us know that we don't die alone, that there's going to be people right there, or angels, or guides. So they showed me that specifically. And I can see it today, right now, like it was yesterday, and that was over 30 years ago. So it's, if they show it to me, I gotta tell people about it, because it might resonate with some people.
Joe, if people want to contact you for readings, do you do readings for the public?
I do readings, but usually if I'm doing a book, there's kind of a long wait. But if they contact me, we can work out a schedule.
Right. So if people what about if people want to study with you, to do groups?
Just send me an email, and I could give them an update if I have some updating classes that are coming, or what in particular they're looking for, if it's going to be a group or if it's going to be one-on-one.
Right.
Yep. Just contact me, and we'll talk about exactly what their needs are.
Fantastic, Joe. I think, and you've been such a wonderful help to this group, to many, many people in this group. And, over the years, you've done wonderful, wonderful work for us, and given lots of talks. If any of you want to see some of Joe's talks on our videos, recorded talks, I think you've done 3 or 4 for us, and they're all excellent. And I think one of my favorite ones is What Our Children Want Us to Know. Do you remember that one? That's a really, really good one. What our children in the afterlife want us to know. So if you're interested in that one, please have a look in our archives of our videos. And of course, this video will be archived, and people will be able to share it with their friends as well. Diane, Gary, can I get you to thank Diane and talk to her, just speak about her book? You muted, Gary.
Well, I had the pleasure of reading Diane's book already, because she's a friend of mine, and I always refer to Diane as my breakfast buddy, because we were at a Suzanne Wilson Soul Power event, and Diane and I were up early every morning. And so I knew a lot of the stories from this book from having conversations with her over 2 or 3 mornings. And Diane, I'm just really thrilled for you. Take a big breath before you start the next book, because it's a thrilling process. I thought when I retired, I was going to write a book, and I wrote a foreword for somebody and realized, I don't know if I want to write a book. It's a lot of work. So kudos to you. Great job. It's captivating, and I hope everybody gets a copy and reads it. And hope to have you soon on the Afterlife Book Club once the book is released and the attendees can get a copy and read it. So thank you. And Joe, thank you too, as well. I've felt really connected with everything you were saying today, and I'll be in touch. I've got some more stories for you. So thanks.
Fantastic. So if anybody else has stories for Joe to be in his next book, Joe, can you give us an idea about what you're looking for in the next book? Do you have anything specific in mind?
Nope. I just know, well, obviously, a lot of times I start off on one subject and then Spirit will tell me, nope, you got to do this one. So I'll take any stories right now, because I can use them in any type of book that, I'll be teaching, or whatever the Spirit will be teaching us, because it's just basically to reinforce that life goes on. So I'll take any story you got. I'll find a place for it. If I have to, I'll write a chapter about it.
There you go. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Diane. We're thrilled about your book. We know it's going to be very, very successful. And more than that, we know that what I love about your story is just your personal example of transformation. That it is a story that gives people hope. And it's a roadmap. It's a roadmap for a grieving person on how they can get through it. And that's what often people don't realize. So thank you so much. And Joe, as always, thank you for being there and for being of service to this community. And thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye for now.